Oh, hi, Melissa. I think we're live. I'm waiting for it to head
We're
over
live
to
too.
Substack. Oh, yes, we're definitely
Okay.
live.
Oh, good. Welcome, everyone. Hello.
Yes, welcome to Office Hours. Melissa, you just got back from Las Vegas. How was your trip?
I did. It was hot, but we had a great time. Like no gambling, just lots of food, walking, just kind of relaxing. I didn't open my laptop for like 3 days, which might be the first time in about 5 years that I've done that. So that felt really good to just step away for a little bit and unwind. So yeah, I'm happy to be back. And you were on a trip. We were both in like jet setting, emailing from airports all over the place. So how was your trip?
Well, I was in Norway for the Midnight Sun Half Marathon, and it was awesome. It was extremely beautiful, but I I barely went 3 hours without opening my laptop. I don't know. I don't have a lot to do other than do my work, especially on the plane, as long as I could stay awake.
Yeah.
Um, but I went around biking, running, hiking, but I only have so much energy to do that. And then in between, it's like, well, I might as well get some work done.
I think we do have a little bit different job descriptions, whereas and I can like schedule a lot of stuff ahead of time for social media, emails that are going out, things of that nature, where yours is much more reactive to what's happening in real time with people. So
Well,
yeah.
and when I'm working on an edit, reading along a 300, 400 page manuscript, it's like every chunk, every 20 minutes, 40 minutes I can spend working on it helps get towards the end of it so that I can write my report and do my edit. But yeah, so that whenever I have one of those, I always have something I can do if I just open up the laptop.
I had stuff I could do. I just
Uh-huh.
let it wait till I got home. And how was your time? How did the marathon itself? Were you happy with your result?
No. So I finished in 2 hours and 58 seconds, which is fine. I think it's 9:22 per mile. Um, but you were following me on Strava. You saw that I was running about 8.5 minute miles, and I was running really well in the race. But my right leg was in a lot of pain by the end, and I could just barely drag myself over the finish line, really for the last 3 miles. So I really slowed down at the end, and I was disappointed in that. But I've already started doing hip exercises in the morning and riding my exercise bike, so I'm not giving up on it. I'll see if I can strengthen my core and hip flexors and all that kind of stuff and get back to it.
Yeah, I think most of us here watching would be thrilled to have even under a 10-minute mile. I don't think I've ever cracked that before, so I still think you did an amazing job running.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Well,
Well,
talking about keeping busy and freelancing and all the projects coming in, let's chat about it today.
yeah. Well, what I wanted to start with was around the publishing process because you and I both run into folks who will maybe be a little too excited to get their book out into the world, and I find that can lead to mistakes. It's good to be excited. It's good to have want to get that out there and put it in the hands of readers, but I find that patience is a virtue when it comes to publishing. So I guess I just want to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, yeah, let's jump right in because I know for my traditionally published authors, it's at least a year behind the scenes that we're working with a publishing house before a book comes out. And it's a whole process, and we go through a lot of things before it's ready. And the downside can be that indie authors can want to skip past all of the things in the process. So, how do you handle that when somebody comes to you and wants to like, let's get this project going and kind of guiding them through that?
Well, it depends if whether I'm working with them on a freelance basis or whether I'm working with them with history through fiction. With history through fiction, I layer the process from editing to design to marketing and book launch and post launch. And I try as much as I can not to overlap those to a certain degree. Like during editing, it is important for the author to begin thinking about building their platform and engaging with their audience. But for the most part, we don't want to start thinking too far ahead until we get done with editing because you never know what's going to come up or how long it's going to take. And it just gets stressful when you start to move ahead into one process and then have to back up into another. Another reason for that is there's usually more than one person involved. Even if you're self-publishing, completely autonomously, there's going to be other people involved in one, even if it is your readers. And you want to respect the fact that they have schedules and you don't know what might come up in their lives that might get in the way of their schedules and things like that. So the more time you build in, the more room for these unforeseen circumstances you have. And I find that if you are pushing things forward because, oh, I have these people that want to read my book and I want to get it out by this such and such anniversary date, like that only leads to stress and mistakes and a lot of pressure on everyone involved. And it's like the book's going to come out at some point, whether it's next week or next year, the day will come. And I find it's best just to give yourself plenty of time for all those unforeseen circumstances. And that's a really hard thing to coach to get people to understand when they're into it and they're emotional about it. They've been spending so many years already on it. But it just seems like after having worked with so many people, having published so many books, that's the best strategy is giving yourself time.
Yeah, absolutely. We're not there to kill the excitement because like we're excited about the project too, but it's a business. This is again where that mindset of treating it like a business and like a good, a restaurant doesn't rush to open. They like make sure that everything is in set to go before they have like open dates that they're announcing and things of that nature. So if you think of it through the lens of you're running a business and nothing good comes in business from rushing an opening or a launch. So treat it the same way with the same of going into it. And I want to touch on two quick points that jumped out if I could. So one is even if you're the only person involved in the process of like you're editing, you're doing your cover design, you're doing the formatting, all of the things, like bare minimum, you should at least be having like a beta reader and ARC readers in the process. And one of the things that I've seen happen is people will they have books coming out and they'll say like, oh, can you send this to my ARC team? And the book comes out like the next week. That doesn't respect people's time. I think you and I have a conversation a lot about respecting people's time. And they're going to be catching mistakes, and then you're going to be stressing to try to fix those mistakes and then reformat the book. And you're giving yourself unnecessary stress in the process. So, like, let it breathe and have time for the project, and it's going to be so much better in the long run. And you're going to be in a better mood when the book comes out and able to like happily market your book. And the other thing that I wanted to touch on was I wanted to bring clarification to when you're talking about, you're working on other things behind the scenes and not the marketing side of the project. That doesn't mean that you can't already at that point be showing up on social media and building a community around a general theme of whatever it is you're bringing to your social media in the process. It just means we're not like strongly marketing the specific book that you're in the editing process for, all those things. We'll get to that when we get a little bit closer to we have the book release date set, we have a cover design on all of those things, but still be showing up. You're marketing yourself as an author for people to follow, just not specifically the book at that time.
Yeah, I don't know how you would, if there's a word to define those different aspects of marketing, but there's definitely a huge difference between a year before publishing and you are building your audience and versus 4 months before publishing and you actually have a marketing campaign with exact dates of when certain blog posts are going to go up, when certain ads are going to go up, when you're doing certain speaking engagements. They're very different types of marketing.
Yeah, I look at it as we talked about this in workshops, like building your personal brand is your base level for your social media. So you're drawing people into you, you're projects, what you're doing, your voice, how you like your writing voice, even in your captions, like you as a person is kind of the draw in what you're offering as your social media value. And then you have the marketing for book specific marketing. So those two things coexist, but there's going to be a period of time where your just personal brand marketing is the lead in between the books releasing.
Yeah, and that book cover design is a good division point between the two because that cover design acts as your your new brand. It's more than you, but it's the book, and you use those color schemes and those design elements in everything you do after you have the cover design.
Absolutely. Just to use the restaurant analogy again, I must be hungry at lunchtime. But like, if you think about, we use randomly like Chili's as an example, right? So you know Chili's as a restaurant and they exist, and maybe you still go there and you do your stuff. But when they have a special going on and they're highlighting, and you see like those photos where the food looks really good, and you're like, oh, that's totally up my alley. I want to go try that. That's like your book cover. Like, oh, I already know this author. I know what they have. Maybe I've read other books by them before, but then when I see that like book description, that gets me super excited and I see the cover, like I want to go back again to grab that. So it makes sense with my food analogy today, but it's like the same thing as like you're always there and showing up as the author. And then you're like, I have something new and exciting to share with you for my special that's currently on. Grab my book that's, a pre-order link or a new release or something of that nature.
Well, let me just use that analogy as well. When I worked at Jimmy John's, we were really, 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 really busy from 11 to 1 over lunch. We might sell 500 sandwiches from 11 to 1, and the whole rest of the day we might sell 100 sandwiches. And as the manager, I would get there at 5 a.m., start baking the bread, start cutting the meat and the vegetables, laying everything out. I'm there by myself until 9:30 until some other employees show up. And then by the time it gets to 11, we have a dozen employees and we're making sandwiches in 30 seconds or less and just churning them out super fast. And so I think of the book marketing the same way. The lunch period is your book launch. You, the author, the manager of the restaurant, you're doing the work behind the scenes early in the morning. Nobody's there watching or
Mhm.
cheering you on. You're getting ready for that book launch, and it just builds and builds and builds until I can't imagine running a lunch shift at Jimmy John's if we weren't ready for it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that works perfectly. And there is that, like, most of the time when you have your book launch, you see that big tick up in sales and then it levels up. But what we hope is that it's like still sustaining through the rest of the day. Like those other 100 sandwiches that you sold are still helping keep Jimmy John's afloat. But
Hmm.
those big rushes that you have in between are kind of like the huge fanfare. And every time you have that, you kind of gain new people, new followers, growing your community. So keep the analogy going. If you make someone a great Jimmy John sandwich and they tell their friends about it, then their friends want to come to Jimmy John's for lunch as well. That's what we hope happens.
When I worked at Papa John's, our goal was always 100 pie hour is what we called it, 100 pizzas in an hour.
Oh wow.
That's when it was really busy. Yeah.
That yeah. Clearly how we must both be thinking food today, or I just added some track of food. It's probably me. But yes,
Well,
there's a lot of people that are in sometimes for some people, a lot of people in the process. And you have to understand too that the freelancers that you might be working with have a lot of other projects going on at the same time. That's how we build our businesses is with multiple clients that we're working with. So respecting the ebb and flow and realizing that everything can't happen like tomorrow. There's a process that has to take place and you fit into someone's timeline in a certain way as well. I'm sure the same thing happens when you're taking on projects that you're working through and you're editing whole books or doing things with people that you can't just read a book in a day and edit it really well. Like it takes time to manage that project.
yeah, it's a little different sometimes as a publisher. I'm a bit of a project manager and I'm just a mediator between the author and the freelancer that History Through Fiction is working with. But that's where it's especially apparent that there's not always this awareness of the fact that we're dealing with a freelance contractor who is working on multiple projects, and like we don't have people in-house. And I don't know how I might work at a bigger press where they have people in-house, but um, it's important to remember that the person that you're contracting with, first of all, is working on a contract basis. So you always can go back to what that agreement is, what are the dates, what are the terms, what are the expectations set in that contract, and then just have a certain respect for their schedules and the other clients that they're working with, rather than doing one little thing at a time, saying, hey, I need this now, or hey, I need that next. But trying to put it in chunks, put it in well communicated emails, knowing that if you do go beyond the agreement, that there will be extra charges for those, whatever you're asking that's goes above and beyond what's in the agreement. Just little things like that that can be easy to forget when you're just thinking about your book and you're not thinking about what the freelance contractor is working on, or what all of the freelance contractors, because usually you're working with more than one, and so you might set a date that you and another contractor can reach, but then you forget that, oh, there's this third party or fourth party that maybe that doesn't fit within their schedule. So that's another reason to build in a lot of extra time.
Absolutely. And I think respecting the whoever you're working with, that they're a professional in the job that you're hiring them to do. So give them some creative freedom to do the best practices that they know work, because it might not be something that you're an expert in. So like trust their guidance to be in your best interest, because I do find that sometimes people want to hold on so tight to a project because it is very important to them and they've been working on this whole process, and maybe it's a decade they've been working on this book and now they've come to the cover design or the marketing or whatever it is, and they have already built up in their head this idea, and we're there to help people, right? We want them to sell more books. So when we offer guidance, obviously it's each person take it or leave it as to what they want, but like we're there to help you succeed. So at least listen to it with an open mind. Also, to back up from that, I would say come into the projects knowing what you want from somebody. So sometimes I have like discovery calls with people and they're like, well, I think I want to work with someone for marketing, but I don't know what I need help with. That might be like a first conversation that we have, but normally I'll talk it over with them and see like what areas are they struggling, what sort of help are they looking for, how can I best to work with them. But if you can kind of assess that yourself, whatever the project is, and come into it knowing what you're looking for, at least like a general idea that you can talk over with someone, then that can be super helpful just to save everyone time. I mean, even for an editing project, I'm sure like what type of editing are you looking for? And if people haven't even explored what different types there might be, then they're not sure which way to go. Understanding what does hybrid publishing offer? Like what part are you coming to? Like understand what you're asking help for from someone and bring clarity to the conversation.
What would you say makes a good, for lack of a better word, client to work with? You work with a lot of authors, you have over many years now. What makes that relationship positive and something that you look forward to, someone you look forward to working with?
I think clients that trust me to be understanding of what they need help with and trusting my instincts. So sometimes I'll have people that will come back and say, like, well, I want to do it this way, and kind of be fighting me in the process. But when I have someone that I always give an explanation as to, hey, I think we should do this instead when they suggested something, and here's my whys of why I think we should maybe change. And then they'll say, like, oh my goodness, like that makes perfect sense. You're the expert. I trust you. And they value my opinion rather than fighting me along the process. And then definitely someone that respects my time and says, like a lot of clients will have a call maybe at the beginning of the month or the end of the month and say, this is what we have going on. Here's sales that I'm going to be running. Here's what my publisher is going to be doing. And we can kind of at least loosely plan out ahead what the month is going to be, rather than emails that I get that are like, this has to go out in the next 24 hours. Can you get this? Well, I also have a family and I have friends and like my own sanity a little bit. So if I'm always being approached with a sense of like stress and urgency, that's frustrating for everybody. Even the person that's sending me the email is doing it from a space of like chaos. So if we can manage our time and understand that I'm there to help you, I think that helps make a good client. And what about for you in your process?
Well, it's interesting what you said about if you can tell me why. So when I'm editing a novel, I might have a suggestion for improving the ending or something. And if the author can come back, like usually I'm coming at it from a craft perspective. I would say if you do this, you'll have a much larger emotional response from the reader. But then they might come in with a very personal story about why it needs to stay this way or why it connects in some other way to something that happens earlier in the novel that I didn't realize. And like you said, that makes perfect sense. And although any advice I give an author, it's coming from a place of expertise, but I don't know everything they know. And so it's just helpful for me to maintain that relationship when they can tell me why instead of just ignoring or saying no the advice that I'm giving. So that's always helpful. Um, and yeah, just being completely open about what your goals are, and why and what I can do to help, because that's ultimately our goal is to make sure that we can help our clients achieve their goals. So being as forthright as possible about what your actual expectations are and where you want to go with this, because the more information we have, the more information I have, the better I can assist in helping my clients to accomplish what they're trying to accomplish. And that makes me feel good. It makes them feel good. So I think that's really valuable.
So I think there can be a lot to gain from a successful working relationship where everyone is open, willing to listen to feedback and learn and grow. That makes a great relationship.
Yeah. It's already 12:22. I didn't feel like we've been talking that long. Um, and I did want to bring up a little bit of AI because I don't know if you've seen on Peacock, there's the AI Doctors, a documentary. Have you seen that?
No, I haven't.
So I just watched that. And well, AI comes up constantly, and we could talk about it forever, and it's very controversial. But I thought I don't talk about it much, and even in the panels I do, what's new in historical fiction, for instance, I just don't bring it up much. And when it does come up, it just things get really uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Um, but it's pretty unavoidable. So one thing I do want to say is that history through fiction, as far as we do have a clause in our contract that at one point I had a clause in there that said your book cannot be generated by more than 2.5% of AI generated content. But I took that out because you can't really measure that anymore. And AI is built into so many of our systems now, even on Canva. Now you can just type in what you wanted to do.
Yeah.
I was creating a design where I wasn't using any AI, and I wanted to blur a line, and I couldn't figure out how to do it with the tools. But then you could just tell the magic AI to do it, and
Crazy.
it did it.
Yeah.
Um, in any case, I do have a clause in there that you have to declare that you have not used generative AI for the writing of your story. I can't necessarily police that, but it is important to us that they're human created works of fiction. And I think they'll ultimately will be better if they are human created. But I guess I just wanted to start out by saying we do have a clause that you can't use AI to write your novel, and we don't want to publish anything like that. But that's not to say we are totally against AI.
Right.
Um, so what are your thoughts on it, especially when it's coming into the work that you're doing, it's coming into the work that authors are doing?
Yeah, I will say it's funny you brought up Canva because I was working on a graphic the other day for something and I was like trying to get it just right visually so it like I just have that moment when I'm creating something that it's like, oh, it all comes together and it feels so good. Like visually, it just gives me like puts a smile on my face that like, yeah, that was exactly what I was going for. And I think it's the same with so many creative things. Like we can jump past those little moments and have AI create a graphic to speed up the process. Like it's fine, it's part of our life now, but then we lose the little moments of pleasure of like, hey, I created this graphic and I love the way it looks. It's really cool. And yes, it's just a blip in the algorithm, but there's something inherently human, I think, about those little moments of joy of creating. Um, whether it's like stopping to take time to color a coloring page, like those adult coloring books, and it's like you kind of forget, like, oh man, it's really fun to stop and color for 5 minutes. And I think for me, my work also feels like there's moments of joy in creating things visually for people, and that's why I love doing fics. Um, I do use like for the mock book photos before we have like a book published, or if I don't have a copy of the book, I will use like book brush, which I kind of consider to be sort of a version of AI for things like that. But I'm still a little old school with my graphics and certain things I love to create. For myself, I do love AI because I work with you frequently and like we talk over a lot of ideas, but there's a lot of projects that I'm doing on my own. So it kind of, I can organize my own thoughts better on there. So I'll kind of do like turn the voice thing on and ramble away of like, this is what I'm thinking. And just to help me get an outline of my thoughts. Like occasionally for my Substack, I'll kind of ramble to it, just tell it all the things that I'm thinking. I'll still write the personal stories, write all the stuff that's there, but say, help me create an outline for this, just so I can kind of see the framework of where I want to go, because I like to just kind of dump my ideas sometimes. So I do love it for helping to gain structure. But again, I think it's why it's so controversial is it's always that tipping point of like, when is it actually creating the content for you? And I really want to hold on to that. I think it's in like that's why we don't read books that are, AI written. I want to see the human behind the story and know that they explored the job that the person was doing. They felt the feelings. They had to like sit there and, move their arms around to like think things through that they were writing in the motion. So that's where I kind of land on it. Currently, I do feel it's kind of like saying, I'm going to use an encyclopedia when we have the internet. Like it's getting to a point of like there when you have a business, there's a certain point of like getting completely left behind and staying up with technology, but then AI is different than anything we have had before. So how far do we explore into it? Your
Yeah.
thoughts?
Well, there's a lot to be said what you mentioned about the satisfaction of doing it yourself. And speaking of which, when I was in Norway, and I told you this already, I didn't want to turn my Verizon on and spend the money to pay for my phone service. So I didn't have access to maps on my phone. Now I'm old enough to have been around before that. Um, and it was intensely satisfying to figure out how to get places just based on landmarks and my own intuition, like my own observations. So that was actually, yeah, I was amazed at how satisfying that was. Um, and then, uh, well, one thing that brought this up was a meeting you and I had the other day where this person was pitching something to us and trying to convince us that we need it because of all the AI it has, because it'll do everything for you. And that was a complete turnoff for me. I was like, I want to do this. I want to put in the time and the effort and the energy. I want this to be me. And yes, AI can be a really excellent tool and a partner in what you're doing. And I use it for things like writing marketing copy and writing content. And it is just some back and forth and it helps organize my ideas, like you said. Um, but at the same time, you are losing a little bit of your own voice and your own authenticity. And if I'm going to create something out of thin air, I need to be able to do that process myself, or for the most part. Um, I guess I just don't see it at, I don't want to just give everything over to the machine to just do it
Yeah,
for me. I'll,
absolutely.
and I also want to mention that there is a lot of feelings one way or the other towards AI, and I'm on I'm in a place where I don't want to judge anyone which way they go one way or another. I can make my own decision as far as when I want to use it, how I want to use it, and I'm not going to pass a judgment on someone else based on what reasons they may or may not use it, because it does add a lot of accessibility for people on things that they couldn't access before, and they may have their reasons for using it or not. But I'm not in that camp where I'm going to go out on social media and start chastising people
Right.
that are using it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's always a conversation to have around the uses, who's using it, how are they using it, how is it, like you said, maybe helping open people to other ideas or other ways to be able to write that maybe wouldn't have been accessible for them before. Can I end on one food analogy that
Okay.
popped into my head just to bring this whole thing back home? As you were talking, I was thinking, you know what, like doing a project without AI is like when you go to the store and you buy all the ingredients and you cook your whole meal from scratch, and it's like a whole process and it takes you 2 hours, but you end up with like the most beautiful pasta and homemade meatballs and garlic bread and a salad and like all the things. And then you sit down with your family and it's an experience and you eat it and you enjoy it and you forget about the work that it took to get there. And using AI is like a TV dinner. Like it serves the same purpose, it
Uh-huh.
feeds you, but it's just there. And you didn't get the joy that was like put into the experience of creating it and making it happen. Like the same thing in the end, you have a meal, but like you enjoy one so much more at the end when you
I
took
don't
the
know. I'll go
time.
with the TV dinner every time. I'm sorry. Give me the hot pocket that I can put in the microwave for 2 minutes.
Oh, Colin. I'm gonna be cooking from scratch over here.
Well,
But
yeah,
it's a
our
good
time is,
conversation to keep having.
yeah. A half hour went pretty quickly. It's
It's
been
it.
another fun edition of Office Hours. We'll be back in 2 weeks. Any announcements we need to make other than that?
I don't think so. Just keep checking out our workshops that we have. If you subscribe to Colin's Substack, you can check out the workshops on there. We have there's some announcements for the reading stuff coming up that you've been making. So if they subscribe and stay informed, there are definitely things coming up in the second half of the year.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Melissa. We'll see you next time on our Office Hours, and thanks everybody who's watching.
Take care. Bye.